everyone, welcome back to A Wild Approach. My name is Macy Lou, and today is episode 3 of the Wildlife Pond. I am very excited to share this video with you. These clips were filmed between June 24th, 2025 and July 6th, 2025. So that is the time frame that these clips were filmed, and so let's jump right into this video. Alright, so the pond goes through an ebb and flow of water level as well as clarity. So in some of these clips, you're going to see that the pond is pretty clear. You can see pretty far into the pond, while other clips, it's going to be cloudier. And it's going to be really hard to see into the pond whatsoever in those clips. So it has an ebb and flow of both cloudiness and of depth of water level. So far, I do want to update you guys on this part. So far, I have not had to hook up the hose to the filter and top it off with the hose yet. I've still just been letting the water level sink down a little bit, and my husband has been putting the dehumidifier water into the pond. Someone did bring up a point about the dehumidifier water, something about, is it actually fully safe? So far so good. I haven't seen any issues from it, but that is a good thing to look up and to actually dive into a little bit deeper, just in case there is some kind of, dehumidifier part, like a part inside the dehumidifier that could somehow make the water less safe. I'm not really sure, but look into that if that's something that you are interested in. Here is a well, it already went away off the screen, but there is a plant in the pond that I don't know what it is, and I don't know if it's native or not. It's not partridge pea, but it looks a whole lot like partridge pea, and I've been trying to figure out what it is. But that being said, it is time to go to a break. We'll be right back. Hi guys, could you hit the like button underneath this video? It helps me know which videos resonate most with you guys. Do you need a short, quick guide to get started in wildlife gardening? Well, turns out I've got just the thing. I just came out with a new free ebook just for you, and it's called A Wild Approach to Gardening 101, and it's available on my website today at macylou.com/shop. It's free, so go check it out. What do you have to lose? Alright, so we're back. And what I want to say about this pond is that this pond has been such a breath of fresh air this year, because I've actually been having a rough summer. I haven't been as inspired in the garden. I've had a lot of annoying things in the garden pop up. And I'm going to talk about that in a separate video. I don't want to taint this video with too much talk about that. But that being said, because of these other negative things that have been going on in the garden this year, the pond has been such a gift to myself, I guess, and to my husband, and to the wildlife here at our, on our property. Because it's just such a positive force in the garden, and here you can see that more cloudiness. I think something came and disrupted the water lilies and splashed around. The birds don't usually create this big of a mess, so I feel like it was a larger critter that splashed around and made this mess. You can see the dirt on the water lilies and just how disheveled they are. But don't worry, because it all worked itself out. Everything got back to normal. So sometimes larger critters will visit your pond. I don't have footage of those because I still don't have a trail cam put up at the pond yet. I'm hoping to get one within a year from now, hopefully. I can't make any promises. It just depends on how the budget goes, because I have another garden project to budget for coming up, which I will get into in a different video. But that being said, the pond has been such a breath of fresh air, because there's so many new things to look at, so many new critters to have around and just be excited for. The water striders, the back swimmers, the frogs, the frog spawn, the eggs, all the different stages of frog life, and the dragonflies, the dragonfly larvae. Actually, I should say nymphs. I keep calling them larvae, but the dragonfly nymphs and the damselflies. I even got damselflies showing up. And so it has been such a wonderful element to add to the garden, and I absolutely adore the pond, and it's been something to get my attention off of the negative things that have been going on. So anyways, back to the pond and what I was talking about. So all these different critters have shown up, things that most of them I haven't seen in my garden before, but a couple of them I had seen before, but weren't in the garden very often because there was no pond back then, right? And now that the pond is here, all this life is here that wasn't here before. And that goes back to the original garden plan itself. The original goal was to attract wildlife where there previously just wasn't anything to be seen, but like 2 or 3 different species, right? So what I'm getting at is the diversity of species has increased quite a bit just by adding the pond, on top of the additional diversity of species over the past few years, just adding a garden to this property. So I started out with just lawn, invasive plants, and some non-invasive plants, but mostly lawn and invasive plants. Anyway, it was pretty much nothing to really get excited about. There was pretty much no life. I would see a butterfly fly by once in a blue moon, and it would just fly completely by and just not even stop, not even care to be here or to linger. And I was just, I don't know, I was looking out my window and I was like, what could be? What could this blank slate, empty, barren, not barren in a good way, but barren in a bad way, because that can be a barren, type of habitat can be really, really beautiful actually, but I'm using barren in the old term that I used to use it as when I was doing traditional gardening, right? Just this empty void, we can just say this empty void landscape with pretty much nothing to speak of, right? And my thought process was just, I'm looking out my window and I'm, all I see is lawn, Chinese privet, which is invasive here in East Tennessee where I garden, and the road, the ditch, and then the lawn grass itself is just Bermuda grass, right? And so this is what I was looking out and seeing out of my window. And so the first thing that really struck me was I grew up in the countryside. I grew up in a very rural area. I hate saying the word rural because I'm really bad at saying it. But I like to say countryside, even though I don't really use that term here. But that's where I grew up. I grew up kind of in the middle of nowhere. But we took for granted the butterflies because there would be 30, 40, 50 butterflies you would see a day. Because if it had just rained and there was a mud puddle, it would take a long time for that mud puddle to drain. So in the meantime, there was mud and water in the driveway for days, if not weeks. And there would be like 25 to 35 butterflies in that puddling. And so it was just kind of like, okay, cool. That's just, wildlife is just around us all the time. We don't have to. Growing up, I didn't really know what they were attracted to. I didn't really know what they needed. I just knew they like to be near wildflowers. That's really, and puddles, and mud puddles. That was really my just basic understanding. I didn't understand anything else. And so when I moved to the city, you know, I'm currently in a city. I'm a city girl now from the country. There was this huge, sharp contrast of such a culture shock of lack of life when it comes to wildlife. So like, I can't even really think of any other culture shock things really off the top of my head, but this was the biggest one for me. It was just, where's the butterflies? Where are the bees? I don't have to worry about stepping on a copperhead, yeah, sure, but I also don't get to enjoy the beauty of these, you know, winged creatures that I used to chase when I was like 9 years old, right? And so I was pretty obsessed with butterflies at this point. I think you've gathered that. And I think a lot of you probably love butterflies as much as I do. And so it's kind of how this garden started. I started with traditional gardening, and I know I probably should stop using the word traditional because it kind of might confuse people. But when I say traditional, I kind of mean it in like the typical traditional, maybe even southern type of gardening that I grew up with or that I knew of when it came to more of a, I don't know, almost a settler colonial type thing or an English cottage garden type thing, or I don't know how to describe it. So I just say traditional because, and I think that's a really stupid way to describe it, but it's just shorthand for me. And if you guys have a better description, feel free to tell me. But what I mean by this is I just mean like, we didn't focus on native plants. It was just go to the garden center, go to the big box stores, or the not big box store, but the big, you know, plant place that was not focused on natives but had some natives there. Go to these places, get plants, get soil, get pots, get whatever, come home, put them in the ground, water them, probably overwater them, let's be honest. And did it die? Did it die because it didn't have enough fertilizer? Did it die because you didn't water enough, even though you probably overwatered it? Or, you know, did it die from neglect? There were all these things. A lot of times things would die because I would just put them in the wrong place. That was my huge mistake when I was a very new gardener, is putting the wrong plant in the wrong place. However you want to word that. And why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because I want you to understand why we're here, why I have this pond, how we got here. So I was planting these kind of random plants. Some of them made sense for butterflies. Some of them were just for beauty. A lot of things I just planted because it was pretty. And eventually I planted some zinnias, which are not native in my area, but they definitely attract butterflies. There's just no question. Zinnias, if they're the right kind of zinnias, you don't want to get like the double and the triple and the, you know, whatever zinnia you get, just make sure the butterflies can access the flowers. That's really the main thing. But I was growing like 3 to 4 foot tall, really big flowering zinnias, and they were so gorgeous, and they were attracting swallowtails like crazy. But over time, like all I had were like zinnias, celosia, which celosia didn't really attract butterflies for me. Hardly at all, like maybe a little bit. I don't remember them really attracting butterflies, but they attract like the bees and the wasps like crazy, right? So I was mostly planting like zinnias and celosia. My celosia went bonkers. My celosia kind of took over my garden. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like borderline invasive. And because I was kind of learning about invasive plants at the time, and I was kind of learning about native plants at the time. So I was kind of transitioning from just planting whatever I could get my hands on to like not fully jumping into native plants, but like kind of dipping my toe in it and learning about invasive plants. And of course, from my understanding, now you might have to do some research because I did not look this up ahead of time. This is a very on-the-fly video, by the way. So I don't think Celosia is actually invasive. I think what happened there was my garden, this was the early day, these were the early days, and I hadn't planted hardly anything in this garden. So again, it started out as a non-native lawn of Bermuda. And I was introducing things like Celosia and Zinnia, and maybe some veggies, maybe some kale. I don't know. I was starting really small, and so the Celosia reseeded itself, and it just exploded. It exploded to where almost everything I had was Celosia. Almost every square inch of this garden at one point was this vibrant hot pink and deep maroon pink Celosia flame. And yes, it was beautiful. But at the time I was like, oh my gosh, Mom, the seeds you gave me are invasive. Well, come to find out, they weren't invasive. They were aggressive, and they seemed invasive in my garden because I had nothing else. Once I started inserting the natives in here, the Celosia is almost completely gone. Like, I'll find one or two dinky little baby Celosias every now and then that are trying. Oh, poor little babies are trying so hard, but they just can't survive on their own because they're not actually invasive in my garden. The natives have come in, the aggressive natives have taken over where those Celosias used to be. So Celosia is one of those really cool plants that's beautiful, not native here, right? But the leaves are edible and stuff, and it's really pretty. Wasps and bees love it. But it wasn't really attracting the butterflies for me, and maybe you have a different experience. You can let me know in the comments. But, you know, it kind of faded out of my garden. And, you know, I really think it's beautiful, and it reminds me of my mom, who I miss very much. So I don't really mind growing it. I think maybe I will grow it again, maybe next year as an annual in a pot or something, just for its beauty. But my point in this is to say that when you start creating a garden, it's going to evolve so much. It is wild. I should do another video showing how this garden has evolved. I think I have some that you can go and watch after this video, so you can see the evolution of this garden, but it has evolved so much has changed. So how did I get to the pond? Okay, so I really, 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 really love frogs, and I really, really love dragonflies. It's kind of similar to why I started the garden, right? I really, really loved butterflies. So why did I create the pond? Well, I really, really love dragonflies and frogs. It's pretty simple. So when I first created this, my goal was three things. Attract the frogs, check. Attract the dragonflies, check. And have water lilies, check. So this water lily is a native water lily. It is Nymphaea odorata, I think that's how you say it. And it is I think it's called fragrant water lily, the common name. And this is a particular one that's pink. This is the pink variety. I do not know if this is going to seed or not, because I'm not familiar enough with water lilies to know, is this sterile? Is this like a cultivar situation, or is this pink a natural variety that will seed itself? And we're going to find out, because this flower has opened and closed multiple times, and I think it finally went down into the water eventually, and maybe it's going to produce seed, or maybe it's not. We'll see, maybe. But there was a little frog on that water lily, and I don't know if you caught that. There was a little frog on that water lily, like on one of the flower petals. So you should go back and you should pause the video Maybe even zoom in if you're on a browser, on a computer, if you're on your laptop or whatever. Maybe try to zoom in to the video and see it, because that was so cute. That frog was hiding in the petal of the water lily, okay? I just want to point that out. But the frogs are so cute when they're in this stage where they still have their tail, but they have their legs and their arms. They're just so freaking cute at this stage. I I can't get enough of them. But anyway, so all of that to say is I'm gardening in East Tennessee on 1/4 of an acre. And I have a detached, there's the frog hiding in the petal. Can you see it? Can you see the little frog down there at on the bottom petal of the water lily? Just hiding, just chilling. He's so freaking cute. Okay. I garden in East Tennessee, in the Ridge and Valley ecoregion. I'm on a south, I always forget, is it southwest or is it south? It's mostly south. On a mostly south-facing hillside, well-drained soil. My soil varies a lot from every couple feet. You know what I mean? Like, just everywhere you walk, everywhere you look, it's just a different patch of soil. Like, I always think, oh, this is probably going to be clay, and I dig it, and it's like sand, and I'm like, okay, well, and then I dig another area where I think it's going to be loam, and it's clay, and it's just, I never know what I'm going to get. So my point is I've always struggled to match plants to the right soil. Well, matching it to the light conditions is pretty easy for me, but the soil has always been a challenge, because to me, the soil here doesn't make sense. And because I was quote-unquote traditionally gardening for so long, I was adding things to my soil like crazy, you guys, because I didn't know any better, because that was before I was really into the natives. So I have added mushroom compost, I have added cow manure, I have added lots of different mulches. I used to add the dyed mulches because I didn't know that we shouldn't be using dyed mulch. I didn't know, so I've added all of that. I've added wood chips. Of course, a lot of native plant people use wood chips and they don't mind that. But I've added so many things to the soil. And I used to add, like, fertilizer, too, before I realized with natives you don't need to add fertilizer to the soil, that is. But to pots, you do. But to the soil, you don't. And so I used to fertilize things. I used to try to, like, get things right in that sense. So when you watch my videos, I want you to keep in mind that the plants that I'm growing in my garden may act differently in your garden because you may not have added all these things that you don't really need. Like, for a native garden, it's better to just try to buy the plants or the seeds for the plants that are going to like your garden, that are going to like your light conditions, that are going to like your soil conditions, that are going to be able to handle what your property has to give it, right? And so, that being said, I have made a lot of mistakes over the years, and I've tried to plant certain things that have not made it, or I've put them in the wrong place, and now they do just fine on my property, but in a totally different spot. So a great example of this is your gutters. You know, especially if you have a well-draining site like me, but you want to plant more wetland-loving things, well, that's where a pond comes in, or areas near your gutters. Where do your gutters drain? Where does that water pool? That's where you want to put your wet-loving plants. It sounds so obvious, but this just didn't click for me for the longest time. You would be shocked how long it took me to learn this, but yeah, otherwise you can create a pond, and you can create a wetland type situation. You can create a bog garden. I plan to do a bog garden in a pot. I've been saying this for a while. I need to get on that. I am so behind on that, but my brain has been scattered on all these other things and all these other things I've been getting for the garden instead, and it's just like, but I need to do that because bog gardens are really cool, and I think that's going to be the next interesting element that I should add to the garden, just because I love it, just because it's cool, and because I've been expanding my container garden. But that being said, we're talking about the pond. So attracting butterflies was my main goal, and then over time I had bird baths, okay? And bird baths were always a pain in my butt because you always had to empty them, clean them, refill them. They would attract mosquitoes. You'd have to empty them, clean them, refill them over and over and over. And finally, my bird bath that I had had for a while, it went through most of the winter just fine. And then we were almost done with winter. We had one really bad last cold snap, and it cracked. It cracked. So it was like a terracotta, but it was glazed, and so I thought it was safe. But it cracked because even though the top is glazed and like the pedestal is glazed, the bottom of the dish apparently wasn't glazed because it had to connect to the pedestal, and so they didn't glaze that part so that it would be easier to attach. Well, you know, fun fact, it cracked. And that's sad because I had only had it like a few months at that point, right? So that was frustrating because I finally had a really pretty bird bath. I had reused and recycled stuff I had found around my house for years for bird baths, and somehow they, for the most part, didn't break. Like, most of them survived for years, and then I get this really nice, really thick, glazed, I thought it was, like, sealed properly, I thought it was safe, and it was, it cost a pretty penny, and it was beautiful, and it cracked. And I was like, wow, all these frugal bird baths I put together stuck around way longer than this one that I actually invested in. That's wild. On the screen right now is a damselfly that is just the cutest little thing. So this finally showed up recently, and it is adorable. I love it, and I'm so excited I finally had damselflies because I had seen a damselfly a few years ago before I had a pond, because my neighbor had a pond, and I think it was just visiting my garden because I'm right next door to them. But anyway, I was glad to finally see a damselfly using my garden for actual habitat. So, and not just visiting. So anyways, I had these bird baths, and it was just, they were a pain. I was kind of annoyed dealing with them, and I know that sounds crazy because ponds can be even more maintenance than that, but I was just like, okay, I want frogs, I want dragonflies, I want to be able to see them up close, I want to be able to cultivate a habitat for them. It'll add a wonderful element to the garden, something new, something different, something to get me excited, and on top of it, it will act as a giant bird bath. And what I didn't even think about is it also attracted the predators of the mosquitoes. So yes, I still have mosquitoes, and yes, they're really annoying, and I hate them. But in the spring, this pond was doing great at attracting the predators of the mosquitoes, and they were eating the mosquito larvae like it was going out of style. It was wonderful. But that being said, it does not get rid of all of them. So keep that in mind. Don't assume that because you have a pond means that you're never going to have mosquitoes again, because that's just not how it works. So I'm still using the mosquito dunks in like buckets or whatever the case, and I'm thinking about getting those mosquito bits. Guys, let me know in the comments, do you use mosquito bits? If so, do they work for you? Do you use them in your pots? Do you use them in your garden beds, like in the ground? Like, what is your recommended method for using mosquito bits? Because the mosquitoes were horrific last year, and they're just as horrific now. So things were looking great in the spring, but now that it's late July, oh my gosh, it is awful. I will have a video about that coming up. But anyway, in the meantime, thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on future videos. And I hope you enjoyed this pond update. I have been so happy. This pond has been such a game changer for the garden, and it is such a fun little spot to visit. So thank you guys so much. I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Hey guys, don't forget to follow me on Blue Sky and Instagram. These are the two best social media accounts other than YouTube where you can find me and you can see me post photos of the garden, thoughts on wildlife, and more. So don't forget to follow me over there. Brand new items are now available in the shop. Thanks so much to viewers like you for supporting the channel. To support the channel, like the video, comment, and subscribe. You can also support my work by buying art from me at macylou.com. Thanks for watching!